Today I'm gonna go over API tools, telling you which one you're missing out on and which one you absolutely need to avoid at all costs. I think they're the ultimate speed paint hack. Don't buy this. The quality has had a drop. They go straight to the F tier. Fuck them. Fuck them. Fuck this. By the end of this video, you'll have a full list of essentials, which you can get in the links in the description down below. Okay, let's start from AK Interactive. These paints are, of course, my favorite. There's a simple reason why they're not in S tier. They're very matte, and that's good because they cover very quickly and with few layers, and that's good. They kind of struggle a little bit with glazing because they're so matte, and that's why I didn't put them in S tier, but they're still very good and they're still my favorite paints. So these are A tier. So next up, Chimera. They're so good for some things, but bad for many others. They're good for glazes because they're very pigmented. They're good for getting dark shadows, but they're not good for base coating or stuff like that. These are not really paint that you need, so they're gonna go in the B tier because they're still pretty good. Next up, acrylic inks. I really like these for some things, like for the Chimera paints, glazes, because they're very saturated, but I have a hard time using these inks for creating, you know, the pre-shading with an airbrush or when I have to use oils, because the paint, when I apply the oils, doesn't behave the way it should, so I'm doing something wrong. Probably it's me. So these are in the B tier as well. So next, probably the first paints of everybody's. So these aren't bad per se, but they are pretty inconsistent throughout the range. Some paints are pretty good, like the reds, and some other paints are not and are glossy, and that's not very good. So for this inconsistency, I am gonna have to put them in the C tier. Sorry. Next, we have contrast paints. They're still a little bit inconsistent throughout the range, but they're much better than the regular Citadel paints and the regular washes. They have many uses. You can speed paint with them, you can glaze with them, you can do pre-shading with your airbrush or can highlight with these. They're pretty easy to use if I can use them, you know. so they are a little bit inconsistent, but they deserve a B tier. Next, Vallejo. These used to be my favorite paints because from Citadel to this more consistent paints was a really good jump, and I used to like them a lot. Still, for me, they do have some problems. They kind of are hard to mix, like AK1, I forgot about that. The AK1 as well. They don't have a mix symbol and they are kind of hard to mix with the medium. The medium separates frequently, so you have to shake them a lot. They're a little less matte than the AK Interactive. They're good. They're still B tier material and you should get them. On the other hand, these speed paints, Express Colors. I think I liked them at first try. When I started to try and incorporate them in my projects, they didn't really work, and I didn't quite like this. I don't want to give an F to them because they're not that bad, but still, for me, personal taste, I don't like them as much anymore. So they're gonna go in the C tier. So let's move out from acrylics and into oil paints. I got a few brands. The brand does make a difference because these are regular oil paints when these are specifically made for miniature painting, so they're a little bit less oily. Highly suggest you use up a cardboard palette for oil paints always, but these are more oily. There are many uses for oil paints. They have so much potential. You can do many things with oil paints. I still haven't unlocked the full potential of the oil paints. I do like them. I do want to learn about them and speed paint with these. I think it's pretty cool. So I think they're A tier for that. Last but not least, we have enamels. So I really like these. I think they're the ultimate speed paint hack. I think these are better in oils, but still there is a bit of a difference because if you apply, especially streaking grime here, if you apply it with a brush, it's different than if you apply it with the airbrush. That's not quite what makes it go into the S tier, but these are speed painting hacks, and especially if you're painting Warhammer 40k. So these go in the A tier. So now let's move on to primers. Sorry for the location change. This is a much more comfortable desk, even though I don't have a light. It flickers. Let's move on to primers. The first of the primers I'm going to talk about is the Scale 75 primer, which I mostly use instead of inks. It's not very good, it's not very bad. Sort of does a job. I kind of use it as pre-shading of sorts, but nothing more. And sometimes it's a bit annoying, a bit glossy, and a bit meh. So yeah, this goes to the C tier. Next up, a staple of primers, which is Chaos Black from GW. I have Wraithbone as well here. These for me are the best primers, the most durable primers, even though they're a bit expensive, and I bet you can find good primers for a lower price. They're durable, they're not gonna chip. Airbrush primers are gonna chip, so these are my favorite, and I think they're gonna go in the A tier. Maybe they should go in the S tier, but because they're so expensive, they're gonna go in the A tier. Next up, into the airbrush primer, we have Molotov One for All Acrylic. This is pretty good. It's my go-to for the airbrush. It's not very durable. I mean, it's very good if you intend to strip your minis, because this comes off like a dream and you don't have to use any bad solvents or stuff like that. So that's really good for me to have a primer that I can take off whenever I want. And so this goes to A tier because it's my go-to when I can use a can, when I want to, you know, just paint up some gaming miniatures that I might want to strip. The most disappointing primer of all time. This is a piece of work, really. I don't know how to sell this. I like Vallejo. They have good products, but this primer is ridiculous. I mean, it comes off, I mean, Molotov comes off as well, it chips or whatever, but this is so bad. This is so fucking bad, you have no idea. Just don't buy this. There was a waste of money. I don't know how much it cost, but it was pretty much a waste of money. This is bullshit. This big disappointment, like me to my parents, they go in the F tier. Now let's talk about brushes. You kind of need this, right? So first off, this is a Citadel synthetic brush. We're gonna go through synthetic brushes, and then we're gonna move on to not synthetic brushes. So this first is from Citadel, is expensive. It's pretty shit. It gets ruined pretty quickly, as you might expect from a synthetic brush. So these, they go straight to the F tier. Them. Just don't buy these. Instead, if you want a good synthetic brushes, you can either go with a lot of cheaper ones, or you can go with Uptailing. They're pretty good. They have, of course, a different life expectancies compared to the not synthetic brushes. They're still good for oils, contrast paints, and whatever you need the synthetic brush for. So these go straight to the A tier because it's a must when you have to use like aggressive paints or stuff like that. So A tier. Next we have AK Interactive dry brushes. They're very good. I talked a lot about them in my dry brush videos, so go watch that if you missed it. They're cheap, they're pretty much good quality. So buy these or similar if you want a cheap alternative to the Artist Opus brushes. So AK Interactive brushes go straight to the A tier because it's something that you really need and it's pretty cheap and you want to buy those. Artist Opus brushes, they're very good quality and there is no doubt on that, but they're expensive. They're very expensive. Like I said in previous videos, I do feel bad using these for aggressive applications of paint, so I'm just gonna use them as delicately as possible, which I don't know if necessary is something you want to do with dry brushes. So they go in the C tier for me. Next up are my favorite brushes ever, Artisopus Series S. These are quite expensive as well, but I am gonna spend this money because they're worth it. They're so good for glazing, and since I'm glazing a lot these days because I'm cleaning transition over and over and over and over and over, they're very good for me. In the past, I painted slightly differently, so I needed like bigger reservoir for my paint. So I guess it comes down to both personal preference and also the use that you're gonna make of it, you know? So if you're gonna glaze a lot, you wanna have less paint on the brush, these are good. If you want a big reservoir of paint, because you're painting in layers and wet blending stuff like that, you wanna have a bigger belly for a bigger reservoir of paint, which other brands I'm gonna show you provide. But these here, for me, personal preference, they go in the S tier. When I'm poor and I can't quite afford to buy Artisopus brushes, I buy this. These are decent, they are not top of the line, and that's not really true, but they're passable. They go in the B tier. So these next two used to be my favorite brushes. Now, like I said, I paint differently, so they're not my favorite, but they're still very good. First one is the Raphael. You can see this is pretty beat up. They're pretty durable, they're resistant. This one is pretty beat up and it's still usable. It has lost a little bit of the point, but it's still a brush that I use. Like I said, big reservoir of paint because it has big belly and good for layering, painting and wet blending and stuff like that. They're less good for glazing and precise work because even though they have a pretty good tip, they don't have as good as a tip like the Artisopus. So for me, these are still A tier material because you need these in your paint life. They're pretty cheap as well. They're not as expensive as the Artisopus. And also, following in the A tier, I don't know where you can find these particular brushes outside of Europe. Same principle, they're slightly longer. Sometimes they're kind of hard to control. Their longer tip allows you to load more paint. So really, really good, highly suggested. And it goes in the A tier. And finally, something I used to use, but now I loathe because the quality has had a drop. And I don't know if I'm the only one thinking about this, but I'm talking about Winsor & Newton. I haven't bought those in years, because I feel like their quality has been going down for at least 3 or 4 years now. So I stopped buying them, but I see people that still suggest this. So I don't know if I had like 3 or 4 batches that were bad, and so that's only not very lucky, or if it's something more. Don't really know. I know it's gonna be controversial, but these for me are bullshit, and they go in the F tier. Fuck Winsor & Newton. The next category is palettes, and we're gonna start with plastic palette. What to say about these? You think that these might be useless, but they're not really. They have some use. You can use them for contrast paint, sometimes with oils. They're way better places to put your color on. But still, it's not totally bullshit, so I'm not gonna put it in an F tier, but I'm gonna put it in the C tier. Moving on. So next up is the dreaded wet palette, but I'm gonna talk about the homemade version with a lid and a sponge that you can cut to size, and that's pretty much it. That's the DIY wet palette, and it has a lot of faults. The wet palette is not perfect. Don't think the wet palette is perfect. Sometimes it dries out, sometimes mediums comes out. It depends on the color, on the humidity, and many other factors, but it's pretty important. The DIY one is something that you really need for your painting. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it in the A tier, especially considering that the average price for a wet palette is like from 20 to 80 euros. So you can do this for free with a container, wax paper, blah, 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 and it's a good tool. So this is gonna be a little bit controversial because I don't like it, but I like it, you know? It's a store-bought wet palette. I'm such an hypocrite that I don't recommend it, but I have 2 of these. Yeah, they do their job, but there's nothing here a DIY palette doesn't do. really. The seal, the sponge, this does nothing. I swear, I don't know why they put it in their marketing, but it works because we buy it. And I think we buy it because it's kind of cool. The only interesting thing about this palette in particular is that the second version of the Red Dress wet palette, it comes with some washable papers, and those are really, really good. It's good for the environment as well, so points for that. But still, this is something that you can splurge on if you want to. You don't need to, but I want to, you know? So B tier. The next one is my favorite tool ever, and people are really pissed about this tool. Ceramic palette. This is so useful, I can even tell you. And when I made a video about this palette, people are still getting pissed off about what I said in this video. This doesn't replace fully the wet palette, but still this for beginners is much better because you have your wells here and you can mix, and actually paint stays fresh for longer because you can put it in the fridge. Have this sponges here. I guess you can put the wet palette in the fridge as well, but I'm not personally gonna do it. I bet it has faults. That's why we have different tools in our painting. All these tools have faults and limits, and we're trying to avoid as much as we possibly can have those faults, and we integrate with other products. So for me, this goes in the S tier because it's amazing, I think. Who really wants to get into miniature painting, like really, should get one of these. And I'm done. S tier. So next up is tool for prep, and we're gonna start with glues, starting with the Citadel plastic glue. I never tried other brands of this type of glue. I guess that might be, being Citadel might be a little bit expensive, but I think I get used to it. I got used to it so much that that's it for me. It usually comes with a thingy here. You can be very precise, or you can apply more glue without the thingy. Usually the thingy gets clogged up a lot, but you can, you know, burn a little bit of the glue and free the space. So this for me is a must, and it goes in the A tier because it's just old. It melts the plastic, strong bond, so good for plastic. Just remember, it's plastic glue for plastic, not resin. So A tier. Next up is Tamiya super thin cement, good for details. It's so bad for bigger parts. It's just a pain. It dries super fast. It's meh. Didn't really had a use for it until I actually tried the next thing. And we're gonna put this in the B tier, and we're gonna move on to actually what this is, which is sprue glue. This has many uses. I guess it's a learning curve to how to make this. I don't know if I have the right quantity of plastic in here. I'm not really sure. This is pretty good. Pretty good, and it goes straight to the A tier, I think. Fills gaps. It's so good, so good. A tier. Next we have super glue. I have two brands here. One is the Gorilla Glue. The other one is 21 Glue. My go-to brand for super glue. I don't like working with super glue. It's pretty dangerous, and it actually can be a little bit annoying when stuff doesn't stick right away. That's why the gel thing is a good idea. But this gel that I took from Amazon was, I don't know, defective, I guess that's the word. I use pretty much these. The problem is that they clog a lot. I never had one super glue that didn't clog. And you know, now I just have to use it like this, because that bit is not reusable. I can not open that. You can see all the damage that I have here on the cap. These go in the B tier. You kind of need them sometimes for pinning, and everything else that's not plastic, you kind of need it. But this goes in the B tier. But there is something that really makes your super glue game better, and that is activator. This thing is almost magical, you know. You just spray it and pieces stick. I don't know how dangerous for you to breathe it though. So, but yeah, it's for me this is A tier. Let's move on to the most useless tool ever invented, which is this GW molder and remover. They're so expensive and they're so useless. This is how to waste your money, and this goes straight to the F tier. Fuck this. What you have and what you must use instead is an X-Acto knife. I've been using this GW cutter for like years now. What pisses me off about GW is that they don't provide blades. Back in the day, how was I supposed to get new blades for this? Lucky for me, now there's Amazon. Buy a bunch of these and be fine for a while, and they're a lot cheaper than buying it in a hobby store. These I think were a couple of bucks or something like that. So I highly suggest you get these. They're not top quality, but they do the job. They're sharp and they do the job. You can use this pretty much for any of the cleaning job, or if you're kit bashing, you want to scrape off, just be careful. Not super duper wow tool, but still something you really need for everyday usage. A tier. Next up, we have a tool that allows you to get your miniature off the sprue, and these are clippers. Yeah, you kind of need those. I've been using this yellow ones from GW for, I think, 10 years, something like that. But now they're pretty ruined. And I've actually bought the new ones, and they're pretty ruined as well. There are clippers out there that are better than this, but still, the only clippers that I bought that weren't Games Workshop, they broke. They really broke. So can be without it. You can, but I wouldn't recommend it. So these are A tier. Next up, we're gonna talk about handles. I don't know if I'm the right person talking about this, because most of the times I don't need it. I don't know if that's because I have small hands or if I'm just not comfortable with the position of the holder while painting. Either way, these are expensive. Even if it's controversial, they're pretty useless because you can easily use anything else, and the ergonomic stuff, that I think that's bullshit. If you want to invest your money on some handles, you do it. But for me, they stick to the F tier because fuck that. What I do instead is to use pretty much anything to make my own handles. So I have this cork here from IKEA. It's just a couple of bucks, nothing major. Different parts of my sub-assemble models on corks. I can fix them to the cork with some paper clip so they don't ruin it and I don't touch the model. And I'm able to work much more comfortably. Different size corks. You can use shot glasses like Midwinter Minis does, old pot. But you can pretty much do anything. You can use even the color itself. You can sometimes happens to me because it can hold it. And it doesn't have to be ergonomic or shit like that. So these go in the A tier for me. Next we have sanding sticks, sanding pads, sanding everything that's sanding. They come in different forms. I think we all started from the metal files. These are kind of bad. I tried all shapes. They're not very comfortable for me to use. I don't like them. I prefer using actual sandpaper or better these sanding pads. But there's still, if you have a small model in a very small space, you have a mold line, that's gonna be tough to clean. You don't really need that level of cleanliness of your miniature. So I would skip that as much as possible. And this for me goes in the B tier because it's something that you really want if you want to prep your model for like Golden Demon or competition, but you can skip those. So yeah, B tier. And last but certainly not least, had the end drill. This has a lot of uses. You can drill your gun barrels, of course. That's like, you cannot not do that. That's not allowed. You can also use it to pin your miniatures. You might want to upgrade to a Dremel if you're using a lot of this. I'm not the right person to suggest you a Dremel because the one that I bought from Amazon doesn't really work well for drilling. This goes in the A tier. Next we have basing stuff. We're gonna start off with stand, and I have these types of stands. I actually have more, but here on the desk I have two types. I have, they're from Geek Gaming Cynics. They're really good. Having a different variety of earth is really useful to have like a variety of in your base, because nature has varieties. You can pick your own, you can take your sand, and I think you have to cook it in the oven to get rid of any bacteria or stuff like that. I don't think you need to do that, really. So don't do it, I don't know. But this goes to the B tier. So next up are texture pastes. I both tried the Citadel ones and the AK Interactive ones, and I compared those two in this video here. You might want to click it, but these are pretty good. I like that they come now a smaller container. It doesn't stay wet per se. There is so much texture paste, but yeah, these are good. You kind of need this, so they go in the B tier. So this next one is probably not game changer for you, but for me it really was. And it's coconut fiber. I only tried it recently. I meant to try it sooner, but I never got around to it because I couldn't quite find it. But now I found it, and that's amazing. It has this little hairs from the coconut that they play such an amazing role as little roots. So this is a must-have. It costs like a couple of euros. Yeah, get this. This deserves the S tier. Next up is all the plants and tufts and stuff like that actually enrich your base. You doing any effort without needing any effort from you. You just put them on and they're pretty. You should get a bunch of those. I like these for Gamers Grass. They send me a bunch of these, so of course I like them. I also bought these from AK Interactive, this foliage, which I don't know how I'm gonna use yet. So yeah, get some of these to level up your basing. Another thing for basing that really feels like cheating are pigments. You only have to apply with some kind of medium. Usually I use mineral spirits, but you can use the pigment fixer. But I like it more when I use the mineral spirits to make them stick to the base. These are gonna make your model look really cool with really low effort, so highly suggest this. These go in the A tier. Next up are textured rolling pins. I guess these are useful to some extent. They're very useful. They create this pattern. You can use them with like Milliput, green stuff, which I haven't put in this. I don't know why. They're pretty good for the effect they create, but still, I don't really like whole bases doing like this, done like this, because they're kind of wonky and not really very durable. But what you can do is use pieces of this in your terrain, maybe shave off part here and incorporate with the bases, you know. So this has some kind of use. Still, I think they are C tier, not F, C. Sufficient, you know. And last but not least, we have mediums and whatnot. I'm gonna start with gloss varnish, which I'm not really that big of a fan of. I guess it has some uses because you can use this before you apply your decals to make them stick better. You can apply this before you apply your panel liners or oil washes to reduce the surface tension. Yeah, I don't see me using this gloss for other purposes than that. So I think it goes into the B tier for me. Next we have another game changer. This is something that really changed my life. You have no idea how long I've been looking for this. I tried a bunch of stuff and finally I got to this one. And this is the matte varnish from AK Interactive. You can mix it with your own paint if you have especially glossy paint, or you can apply it later. You can use an airbrush, you can use a brush. It'll work either way. Most of the times in miniature painting, you don't want glossy surface because they're gonna recreate lights that you haven't painted. So this is your lifesaver, especially if you use washes or some kind of contrast paint that can be a little bit glossy. So yeah, S tier. And as I was looking for the matte medium that I found, I went over wide ranges of acrylic mediums and they all sucked. So they sucked so much that I left them, all of them, to my parents' house, and I don't have any to show now. Those are F tier material. Just never buy acrylic made for canvas matte mediums, because they're not gonna work. They're just not gonna work. So F tier, please don't do it. Next one are really pivotal if you're a gamer, or if you're at the beginning you don't feel like freehanding stuff. And these are Microsol and Microset. I don't know if you heard of these. I don't actually have Microsol and Microset because I couldn't find it, but I have some sort of substitute for these. So as one is the decal softener and the other one is decal fixer, and I use these in combination to put my decals on. And my decals game has changed a lot, so highly suggested these go in the A tier, because at the beginning of your journey you don't want to really have to freehand stuff, so please use these. And now there's something that, again, it's controversial, because I said a bunch of times these were useless, to not use them and to just use water, but it turns out that was bullshit. These two things, which are mediums, glaze mediums and contrast medium, these are the key aspect to using the paint as glazes. For glazing, these doesn't make a lot of difference. I think it makes the surface a little bit glossier and it's less hard to blend, but still it's glazing. It's gonna take a long time either way. But with this contrast medium, I can thin down the paint, still maintaining that, not separating from the pigment while drying. So you can find links of useful videos in the description. And also subscribe to my newsletter. Turns out I was wrong, and these go in the A tier. And finally, we have something that I used for a longish time. This is neither good, neither bad. It's something that you add to your color. It's not something that you add like a matte varnish. It makes your paint really matte, so I guess it does its job, but it's not really what I wanted from my paint. Now having AK Interactive paints, I don't really need this. But if you have glossy paints, you might wanna try this. And it goes in the B tier.